What's up, everybody? It's Jason Cruz back again with another episode of The Legal Submission. And while this past Saturday, the loss by Manny Pacquiao against Yordenis Ugas may have been the last we've seen of Manny Pacquiao, the lawsuit in which Audie Attar has sued Pacquiao is not going anywhere. So after the lawsuit was filed, a motion for a preliminary injunction was requested by Audie Attar and Paradigm Entertainment, in which they requested that the court issue an order stopping the August 21st bout between Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence due to the fact that Pacquiao was breaching its contract with Paradigm, and they would be irreparably harmed by the fact that Pacquiao would be in breach of contract and fighting without the guidance of Paradigm, who argues was representing Pacquiao at the particular time. It was actually Tom Brown of TGB Promotions, Errol Spence's promoter, that filed the opposition paperwork on the Pacquiao injunction. And that is because, of course, at the time, prior to Errol Spence's eye injury, he was going to be fighting Pacquiao on that particular date. And so TGB Promotions filed what's called a motion to intervene, which is a third party intervening in a lawsuit because they have an interest in the particular lawsuit. The court granted that motion, and so they were able to go ahead and file opposition to the injunction filed by Audie Attar. Now let's first look at the preliminary injunction filed by Attar. And Judd Bernstein, who's a notable combat sports attorney, was representing Paradigm at this particular time, and still is. The primary argument asserted here by TGB Promotions, who is the intervener and opposed the preliminary injunction, was the fact that third parties would be harmed if the injunction were to be granted. There is an issue as far as whether Pacquiao was under contract with the PBC at the particular time. TGB Promotions noted the fact that there were agreements with Pacquiao to do a particular fight. Under those particular terms argued by TGB Promotions, Pacquiao would be under contract with them. And in the moving papers, TGB Promotions notes this as evidence that the contract with Paradigm was null. But I think the prevailing issue here is the fact that third parties would be harmed, notably Errol Spence, the arena, the venue, the promoters, the businesses surrounding the event, things of that nature. So there would be more harm than good. That was the primary argument by TGB Promotions in opposing the preliminary injunction. Obviously, that was weighed up against the assertion by plaintiffs that they would prevail on a breach of contract claim, and moreover, they would be irreparably harmed because Pacquiao would not pay back the money that was already advanced to him. So let's take a moment and take a look at the relationship between TGB Promotions and Manny Pacquiao. You may recall that Pacquiao was a long time promoted by Bob Arum and Top Rank. Well, that deal ended, and according to court papers, TGB, Tom Brown, approached Pacquiao about the possibility of promoting him after the Top Rank deal went through. Now, you might recall that Pacquiao did a deal by himself in which where he promoted himself in a fight against Lucas Matisse overseas, but that was kind of a one-off. You might recall that Freddie Roach wasn't a member of that particular training camp. It was kind of Pacquiao on his own. He did beat Matisse in that particular fight. Then came the Adrian Broner fight, in which he signed a deal with TGB Promotions. Tom Brown aligned himself essentially with PBC for that particular deal. The contract for the Broner fight included it was a one-fight deal with an option for a second one. Now, that second one turned out to be Keith Thurman, and so there was an amendment to their first original agreement, and there was the Keith Thurman fight. Now, due to the pandemic, there was essentially a lengthening, an extension of their agreement. So they called the Keith Thurman fight 1A, and a second fight would be in the offing in the near future, and that fight would be the Errol Spence fight. Of course, the Spence fight didn't happen, as we've been going over during this little podcast here. But that kind of gives you context in terms of the assertions by both sides in this legal matter. Tom Brown notes that he still has an existing contract, exclusive contract with Pacquiao, whereas Paradigm and Audie Attar claimed that Pacquiao was free and clear of any contractual binds, and therefore signed him. In the papers, it does say that Brown received no notice from Paradigm or regarding any due diligence of finding whether or not they still had a contractual relationship at all. So from the intervener side and from Pacquiao's side, they claim they had an agreement, and you can see from the snapshots of the contracts here that there actually was. So that would make the arguments by Paradigm and Attar a little awkward, because they tried to sign an individual who was already signed. Now, whether or not Manny told them is kind of under the heading of Manny being Manny, but as far as legal issues, TGB Promotions argues that they had a right for the Errol Spence fight. So the main arguments here by TGB Promotions was that any stoppage of an event so close to the event would harm not only the defendant but also third parties such as TGB Promotions. First and foremost, for TGB, they argue it would hurt themselves as a promoter, not only monetarily, because they've gone through the machinations of doing their work in securing venue, negotiation contracts with domestic and international TV and pay-per-view rights, recruiting sponsors for the event, and recruiting fighters for the event to be on the undercard. There is also the issue of reputational harm as a promoter. Tom Brown brings that up. There's also Errol Spence, who was going to be the opponent of Manny Pacquiao, Brown argues that Spence could have foregone the fight with Pacquiao for other contenders. Spence has gone through training in which he's expended his own money for, and also he notes the fact that Pacquiao is at 42. It could be the last chance that Spence would have a chance at Pacquiao. Aside from the general arguments made by the plaintiffs related to the breach of contract on the part of Pacquiao and the irreparable harm the agency would have related to this particular breach, and the claims that Pacquiao would not be able to pay back any monetary funds, the plaintiffs the plaintiff's attorney asserted some allegations related to the promoters, and there was a back and forth with the attorneys as well related to an individual that claimed to be Pacquiao's business manager but also worked for Paradigm. And in the declaration of Tom Brown, he refutes any issues regarding promoters unethically requesting the structure of fighters' income for a bout. And this is related to the fact that Manny had tax issues in the United States. Now, that's been brought up. The tax issues have been brought up. I, for one, believe that that's a red herring to bring up for this particular lawsuit, because that's what you would call a piece of circumstantial evidence related to why Manny wanted an advance for his services. Manny Pacquiao is a famous boxer. He requested an advance, and it was Paradigm's choice to give him that advance, and in fact they did. Now, in the plaintiff's papers for preliminary injunction, they actually asked either that the event be halted or that Pacquiao pay $8.1 million in the court registry to pay back Paradigm plus interest and other things calculated by the agency. Probably the most telling passage in the very short minute order in deciding and denying Paradigm's and Audie Attar's preliminary injunction was a passage which related to the degree of irreparable harm. Now, both sides argued the issue that they would be irreparably harmed. Plaintiffs believed if the fight would go forward, Paradigm would be harmed. Tom, the promoter for Errol Spence, claimed that they'd be irreparably harmed if the fight would be stopped. The court found that there was a greater degree of irreparable injury to the promoter, Spence's promoter, and Pacquiao if the court granted the request for relief to stop the event. So the evidence demonstrated that the fight between Pacquiao and Spence is a major event requiring significant efforts to organize. They recognized that Paradigm had presented evidence of reputational harm, and Pacquiao had anticipated compensation for this damage based on Section 21 of the supplemental agreement. That was Paradigm's own agreement they presented to Pacquiao. Now, the TGB promoters provided evidence as to the potential reputational harm as well, and they recognized there was evidence that that Paradigm tried to organize a fight with Marty Garcia. However, Pacquiao did not agree to the fight with Garcia despite the representations of Pacquiao's advisors. Something Paradigm, I believe, should have known, and something that is gone on with the career of Manny Pacquiao. There are many cooks in the kitchen, to spin a phrase. So the court found that the degree of irreparable injury fell in favor of TGB Promotions because the fight between Pacquiao and Spence is a confirmed event. They had secured a venue, secured sponsors, everything of that nature. So in the end, it was two things fell in favor of Pacquiao here. One, the supplemental agreement had a section for damages, and two, the intervener, TGB Promotions, brought up the evidence of already expending money, and they would be out money if the court were to side with Paradigm and stop the event from happening. So what becomes of the case at this particular point? Well, there's going to be some very feisty discovery between the two sides, maybe some depositions. I don't think that Pacquiao will be deposed. We'll definitely see about that. But what will come out will probably be a mishmash of emails, and you'll see probably a lot of cooks in the kitchen again, as I said, regarding Pacquiao's advisors, regarding negotiations of the Middle East fight. We'll probably see issues related to Paradigm and how they attempted to secure Pacquiao as a client and what was happening behind the scenes at that point. So it'll be an interesting case to follow in the months to come, even though Manny Pacquiao's career as a professional boxer, boxing competitively now, he definitely could do the exhibition rounds, but boxing competitively is likely over. Once again, this is Jason Cruz with The Legal Submission. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll have some more coming out sooner than later. Have a good one, folks.